Hello there guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna cover the Western media censorship. Well, as you could probably tell, maybe you couldn't. I don't know how well familiar you're with something like this, but Western media is very much censoring everything that they don't want you to hear. So, everything kind of revolves around Ukraine, and there are things you can say, and there are things you cannot say. That is called censorship. So, even, I think CNN got banned from Ukraine. Maybe it was CNN. It was some of the American news company that they were always portraying Ukraine as a good guy, as a winning team, you know, what you would expect from the West. And they kind of recorded some of the shots that Kiev didn't like, and that was when Ukrainians so-called liberated one of their cities and pushed the Russians back. Once they entered, everybody was saluting those troops, and the troops were saluting them back with the hand. So there were some kids, very young girls, that were saluting them with the Hitler Youth type of salute, and they showed that to the West, and they got banned from ever entering Ukraine and recording for the news. So that is about Ukraine. So US could force their way in there, like they are forcing their way into everything. So they could do it, but they didn't do it. Simply because, yeah, we want this to be quiet. We don't want people to know who we are paying for over there. So keep it quiet. As soon as the invasion started, if you go on Reddit, let me show you this. So, if you go on Reddit, you can search the r/Russia, which was a Russian Reddit page, and they usually posted things like "this happened in Russia," "look at this Russian city, it's beautiful," or just some random Russian nonsense. But it was based around Russia. Like, every country has their own Reddit page that is not ran by the government, obviously. It's ran by the people. That's how it goes. So, Russia's Reddit, as soon as the invasion started, got, as you can see, quarantined. Why? So if you look at it like, why is it quarantined? What's happening? It still exists. And if you want to view it, you can view it. It's really kind of hard to get into it. I've been following the Russia for a very long time, so I have the access to it, but I still cannot post because I have to request to post. They're really closed in, and as you can see, they're posting fountains of St. Petersburg. They are posting some nice Russian buildings, as you can see. But they're quarantined because they are unreliable news source. Now, this is like, I don't get it why, because there is no reason to quarantine the Russian Reddit, because people want to know what's happening in Russia, and you are blocking in every way possible for people to know what is happening there, to hear Russian voices, to hear Russian people speaking. Maybe they have something against their government. You can use that for your own propaganda. Anything. No, they're not allowing Russia to speak up. Even on the UN summit, when the invasion started, and it was Sergei Lavrov time to speak, the Russian foreign minister, everybody stood up and left the room. And he was talking to the chairs. This is how you talk through problems. This is how you deal with issues. You just leave and don't want to listen. I wonder why. So I also followed the Ukrainian Reddit, and Ukrainian Reddit, I liked it. It also showed the cities. I love watching the things they have to post. But as soon as the invasion started, the special military operation, they started posting about military. A lot about military. Wow, we won, we killed some Russians, and you could see the videos if you were there. It wasn't just on Reddit, it was on Facebook, it was on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere. They would post, Ukrainians would post, dead Russian bodies of the Russian soldiers, and it was recorded for everybody to see, and that was allowed. A bunch of dead people, bloody people, like dismembered people, and everybody was liking that. It would get thousands of likes, hundreds of thousands of likes for Russian soldiers dying. There was even a video of a guy driving his military vehicle and running over dead Russian bodies. And this was liked. This was posted everywhere and allowed, was not removed. I am pretty confident you can still go out there and find these videos. I am not gonna look for them because, I mean, this is mainly going on YouTube. I'm also gonna be posting it on Rumble, but still, I don't want to make a specific video for each of them. If you want to see it, you can see it, but I'm pretty sure, like 90% sure, you already saw these things. Russians, or on their Reddit page, did not post that. As you can see, I can scroll down here, and you can see that they did not post anything anytime soon. That is about their military killing Ukrainians and whatever. There is nothing. So there is some of their military, like capturing a city, a village, about their politics. People talk and they have every right to talk, but there is like no actual footage of people dying, being dismembered, and showing this traumatic things on the social medias. So why did the West stop Russia from speaking up and then blocked them completely, but enabled Ukraine to speak up about these things? And it's not just like that, because you also have the case of Russians being called orcs. You probably heard about this as well. So they were referring to the invading Russians as orcs. You know, the big mean orc that's looking disgusting and all that, and he's a savage and whatever. And they were basically trying to dehumanize Russians. Basically what, and this is not Ukraine. This is the Western media. They were calling them orcs, trying to dehumanize them and make it more acceptable when you see dead Russians. You're like, oh yeah, they're dead. That's good. In 21st century, we had the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany, where they were dehumanizing Jewish people, treating them like animals, and that's why they didn't see them as humans. That's why they had no problem of torturing them, killing them, experimenting on them, enslaving them. It was all good. People were okay with it because they were dehumanizing them. The same thing West did with Russians. And I sat here and I watched and I couldn't believe it. The guy posts a video of 5 dead Russian soldiers, and he's saying, oh, look, 5 dead orcs. couldn't find their way home or something like that. And that gets hundreds of thousands of likes. You're looking at dead people. If you don't like what Putin is doing, you can shit all over Putin, no problem. But these are people doing their jobs. It could be you tomorrow. This is not something that we are supposed to be celebrating in any way possible, but the Western media made it like that. And they like accusing Russia of everything. Oh, the wind is blowing this way, it's Russian fault. It's raining, it's Russia's fault. We are out of money, it's because of Russia. And everything is blamed on Russia. So whenever you go and talk about anything, like they say, well, Russia is bad, they invaded Ukraine. And you can go and say, well, it's because of this, this, and that. And immediately everybody's gonna accuse you, well, that's just Russian propaganda. How can we even get to see any Russian propaganda if you block them everywhere? You're controlling all of the media. All the social media is under your control, and you're filtering out whenever Russia's posting anything from their side, and you're showing just one side. And you're telling me we are listening to Russian propaganda. What is the thing that you're doing? We only see Western propaganda. We don't get to see any Russian propaganda. And there is no Russian propaganda. You can see it here. There are some talks here, so let's see. I can't even fight it. Is NATO helping Ukraine to fight Russia, or is it using Ukraine to fight Russia? The bloc could help end the conflict at any time by addressing the issue around its plans for further expansion. So this is what Russians are talking about. They are asking questions. It's good. Why is this a problem for the West to see? And this is probably not even safe to show around, because YouTube is probably going to remove that, but I don't care. Rumble is going to see it. So go on Rumble, where freedom of speech is still a thing. That's what I can tell you. So the same thing they did with China. And this is... China is more independent than Russia. I mean, Russia has their own version of Google. They have Yandex. They have their own version of Reddit/YouTube. That would be Telegram. And China didn't have any of that. And Google was present in China. And they were also filtering things that people would see. And as we all know, Google is spying on everybody, but we're pretending like it's not happening. You just grab your phone, and if you have it turned on, you can just say, okay, Google, or if you have Siri or whatever, you just say the code word and it activates. You didn't press any buttons, you just said the code word and the application activates. So if you're not listening to us all the time, how did you hear me say this? It has to be listening to be activated. So it's clearly listening to everybody. China did issue a lawsuit against Google, and they basically told them, you cannot do this to us. We don't want you spying on our people. If you want to follow our guidelines, it's okay. If you don't, get out of our country. So Google left. And with Google, you kind of lose access to YouTube, most of emails that are Yahoo, Gmail, all that stuff. It's owned by the Western corporations. So China created everything on their own. They have their own version of Google. They have their own version of YouTube. They have their own emails. They have everything on their own. And this is why you don't really see that many mainland Chinese people on the social media, which you should because there is a lot of them and you should see a bunch of them, but you don't see any. It also goes with video games. They cannot play most games online because it all goes through the Western garbage. So they have their own servers, they have their own games. They're like on another planet because of the censorship. So let's go back to the Russians because this is where it gets quite interesting. So let me show you this one. So, as we know, Telegram is Russian. And you have the freedom to post there whatever you want. You can post Ukraine winning, you can post Russia winning, you can post whatever. They have almost no guidelines, almost no any restrictions. You can say whatever you want. That's what the freedom of speech is. So the West doesn't like that, and Telegram is widely popular in Russia and China and everybody else, and even in the West. But they cannot get Telegram to comply with this censorship. So what they did was they arrested in France. So Pavel Durov, Telegram founder, said France arrest is misguided. So French arrested him on the airport in France when he arrived for whatever reason he's there. The dude is a Russian-born billionaire and he doesn't have to stay in Russia. He did nothing wrong. He just flew to France. So they arrested him and they put him in jail. And like the day after, the Macron himself, the president of France, went to talk to him. So they had these talks about how he's supposed to comply with the Western standards and to filter and censor unwanted content on his platform. Now this is, as he's saying here, the founder of Telegram messaging app, Pavel Durov, under investigation in France, has said that French authorities should have approached his company with their complaints rather than detaining him, calling the arrest misguided. He's right. You want to talk to me? I'm in your country. Just come and talk to me. You know I'm here. I don't even have to be in your country. You can contact me. There is no like telephone lines and they're just cut off from Russia. You can contact these people. I talk to Russians all the time. It's fine. No, they arrested them as a show of power or whatever happened for whatever reason, and basically they told them you gotta start doing this as we say. Now, why would he even consider doing this? It's fine, you can approach, you can ask, it doesn't hurt to ask. But of course, I'm not gonna change anything because this is my platform and it doesn't change anything. So they offered him to move the Telegram to France. For what reason? What do you think? What is the reason why they asked him to do that? Obviously, so they can censor him. On the other hand, we have Elon Musk, which is, I don't like him very much. He's now kind of starting to do some things that I appreciate, but it's, I don't know, I don't like him so far. So there was this Twitter app, as we all know, and it's interesting because even if you Google Twitter, let me show you this, you go and say Twitter, the X pops out, and it is called X, but it's still going on twitter.com. Now, he bought Twitter very suspiciously at the very suspicious time, and he's Main goal was to enable freedom of speech. And I was like, wow, this guy's good. This is a good thing. And he went and unbanned Donald Trump from it because Trump was banned for using the platform for apparently something illegal. I didn't see how, but they banned him, so he unbanned Trump. Trump didn't use Twitter after that anyway. He was done. But Musk's freedom of speech didn't end up looking like that. He banned a lot of people. Twitter started banning a lot of people that were talking against vaccinating, against COVID, that were talking about Russia and Ukraine war the way they didn't like. They're banning a lot of people. So nothing really changed. You didn't really get people to have their freedom of speech. You just did this to unban Trump. This is why Twitter was bought. I don't get it. Like, you buy a company, it's fine. You buy a company, you're apparently a billionaire, a millionaire, whatever you are, and you have a bunch of money. Now this is a private company. Why should private company accept the government's censorships? You don't have to do it. It's a private company. If I have the private property, cops cannot come in without you letting them in or without having a warrant. So if you have your own private company, why do you have to bend over to your government? Unless you're not paying taxes. That would be a reason probably, but who knows? YouTube is doing the same thing. You can't say this and that, unfortunately. And all of the media is pretty much the same. The only media that is free of everything is some of the Indian media. Now, Indians, they're neutral in the whole thing. They're a bit closer to Russia because the West keeps threatening them and East is helping them. So, of course, they're going to be close to Russia. But they still did interviews with Lavrov. They did interviews with Americans, with Germans, with everybody. They're not just having interviews with one side. You cannot talk about conflict if you're just gonna listen to one side. So when they had peace talks in Switzerland, in Germany, in France, all over the Europe about Ukraine, Russia was never present because they didn't call them. They blocked them from going in. Even when Lavrov wanted to fly to Serbia, all the NATO countries that are surrounding Serbia decided to block their airspace to the Russian planes for the Russian diplomat. This is a diplomat. It's a foreign minister, and they all blocked him. So he couldn't go to Serbia. And Serbia is neutral. Serbia has good relations with both sides. It doesn't want to join any side, as it's the case throughout history. But still, why don't you let them in? What's the problem? The problem is that Russians can speak up, can say what it is, not what it could be. Oh, Ukraine could win. No, it can't. It can never win. It's nonsense, obviously. So the guy is gonna tell you that. And that's not just gonna tell you that, it's gonna explain you why. So let's look at some of the Russian media and how Russia is doing things and compare it to the West. So in the West, as you probably all know, let's start with talk shows where the celebrities are going out on TV, and the guy is asking them a bunch of questions. If you didn't know, but you should know, everything is rehearsed. So when you go there, they're telling you, we're gonna ask you these questions. Tell me, how are you gonna answer them? And then you have to tell them word for word, and if they don't like the wording, they're gonna tell you, well, you can't say it like this, you have to say it like that, and you can't answer on this question like that, you have to say something different. So everything is staged. That's the first thing. In Russia, it's not. You show up, they ask you a question, you answer whatever you want, and that's how it goes, because that's on you. If in America everybody hates Trump, and you go on the talk show, you're a popular musician or whatever, and you say, I support Trump. This is your thing. You're gonna deal with the consequences of all of those people who hate Trump. You're gonna lose followers. This is gonna impact you. That's all. So this is the freedom of speech. That's the point of it. You can say whatever you want. You deal with the consequences. You don't get censored. Also in Russia, we have these big, giant interviews with Vladimir Putin, where the media is coming from all over the world, even American, British, German, everybody's showing up there. It's a big hall. He sits in front, everybody's down, and they're asking questions, passing the microphone around, and they ask President of Russia anything they want. Literally anything. You can show up and be like, how big's your belly button? And he's gonna be like, about 2 centimeters. He's gonna tell you, doesn't give a shit. You can ask him whatever you want. Anyone can ask him whatever they want. The president of a country. You can ask, nobody, when you enter there, nobody asks you, what are you gonna ask him? Oh, you can't ask him this, you can't ask him that. They do that in the US. But not in Russia. In Russia, it's actual free media. You can ask whatever you want. I never saw in America any, let's say, not Russian. You're never gonna see any Russians in America asking questions. But it's okay. They don't like each other, so it's fine. Still, Russia allows it, but for the sake of the argument. Also, why are there no, like, their allies, their shadow puppets? Why is none of, like, French, German, British reporters in the US asking their president questions? Aren't you allies? No, they're just American reporters that are under control of the same guys, telling them you have to ask this, this, and that. This one is not. We're not gonna answer it. And sometimes they even ask some questions, and you can see the president either ignoring the question or just walking off the stage. Dude, you have to answer the question. You're not a god. All the people that pay taxes, they don't work for you. You work for them. So when they have a question, you should answer it because they're paying you to do so. Not in the US. It's a dictatorship, but they call Putin a dictator, that there is no free media, that whatever. Putin also had a case with one of his radio stations in Russia, that they were reporting that Russia is losing the war in Ukraine, and they were always pro-Ukraine, and Russia allowed it. This was allowed. Still is. So they had a meeting of some sort. I'm not sure. They have a lot of these meetings when they all come together. They have a dinner, and this is all recorded, and let out on national television in Russia, which is to me insane, that this is not talked about behind the door, as it is the case in the West. So the guy that's running that station, he's on the table as well. He's sitting there, and Putin is asking him openly, like, why do I listen to your radio, and we know what you're talking about, and I'm asking you, why are you saying these things you have no proof of? And you can see the guy just lowering his head down and being quiet. And he's also talking about how Russia is censoring everything. You cannot say anything against their government, yet he's doing that while being on air saying it. If they didn't allow it, you wouldn't be allowed to say that. So what are you talking about? And Putin is pretty insane himself. He asks this in front of everybody and wants to hear his response. And then he started like, oh, we didn't mean it like that. And, you know, he was afraid. It should be. Because you messed up. So Putin even told them that he knows, because they're tracking everything. They're keeping track of everything that's happening in their country. And he even asked him about funds he received from British and Americans. So you're running a Russian radio station for Russian people to listen to, and you're taking money from the other enemy side and saying all this stuff. So aren't you a spy, a foreign agent of some sort? Shouldn't you be arrested? Putin did not arrest him. He just warned him. We know, we see what you're doing. Calm down. You gotta, if you're, because Russian people are paying for this. Don't tell them what the West is telling you to tell them. Tell them what is actually happening. This is your job. You're paid for it. The government supports you. Do your job. Didn't control them. So also you had in these massive press conferences in Russia when Western media was, I'm pretty sure it was Americans because they're the rudest ones, and they're asking questions probably because in the US they can't ask questions they really want to, and they're in Russia where you can ask whatever you want, and they really needed to, let it out, all the pressure from the US. So they asked Putin, why is all of his political opponents, why are they all ending up being arrested? Like, what kind of a democracy are you running here if you're arresting everybody that's against you? And it is suspicious. That's why they're calling him a dictator, because whoever shows up rises a little bit to the interest of people, he ends up in a prison, most likely dying there. Like Navalny. So, he didn't walk off the stage. He didn't lie. At least I think he didn't lie about it. He didn't try to weasel his way out of the question. He answered straight away. He said, all of these people that I arrested, all of my political opponents, so-called, we are keeping track of everything, as they do. And we know, we have documents showing that they're receiving large amounts of money from the Western countries, like, once again, British and American. These countries are claiming to be our enemies, openly saying it. So what do you think that party is gonna do to Russia if they ever get in power? They're gonna destroy it, obviously, because they're financed by these guys, and this is what happens. Where was Navalny before he got arrested? Oh, it was in Germany. What a surprise. Didn't Germans said Trotsky or somebody? This is what they tried to do with Navalny, but Russians are learning from history, and as soon as he landed in Russia, they arrested him. Of course they did, and everybody was like, wow, this is horrible. Why did this happen? He arrested him with proof that he was paid by the West, by their enemies, to come and run here and to start a revolution. Of course we're gonna arrest him. Why did French arrest the Telegram guy? But based on what? Well, Navalny was arrested for a reason, and they have proof. You can listen to them. You don't have to. You can keep buying this Western propaganda. That's all fine. But you have the access to ask President of Russia whatever you want. You don't have that access in the US. You don't have that access in Germany or anywhere. You're screwed. Even in China, you can just go. Russia is the most open country about these things. So we can also look at how West made people that talk against war look bad. This is the most insane thing that I've seen in my life. So when the invasion started of Ukraine, and a lot of Western civilization was like, oh, we don't want another war, especially not in Europe. Keep this away. We had enough wars. We don't need this. And Americans from the other side said, we need to send them equipment to win the war. But what they wanted to say, what they actually meant, is to prolong the war, to damage Russia as much as possible. A lot of people protested all over the Europe, even in the US, that they don't want war. Well, those people got arrested. Those people got banned from social media. I know I did on Reddit. Whenever I said that this is not a good thing, we shouldn't be at war. There is no need for another war, especially against a nuclear power like Russia. This could escalate during a night, and tomorrow we don't wake up. There is no reason for war. This can be fixed if you would listen to the other side. But no, you're walking away as soon as the Russians start speaking. You can debate. You can see what's happening. So people were saying no to war, and those people got banned, arrested, whatever. Everything in the West. Not in Russia. In Russia you had massive protests against war. They are fine. Some of them are arrested that were vandalizing and whatever, attacking police officers, of course. But they were not brutally beaten by the police like they did in France, for example. So you can't tell me that Russia is dictatorship and that you're a good, you're a force of good. You're not. What you're doing is worse than what China is doing. And they're communists, so what are you? Fascists? I don't get it what you are. Doesn't make any sense to me. So speaking against war was a bad thing. Saying rational things like Ukraine can't win is a bad thing. You get banned for that too. And eventually people were just seeing these good things, fake good things that West wanted them to see. And now even if you go, let's say on Reddit, and you post on Ukrainian Reddit page something that's not positive towards Ukraine, like you can just say, wow, why is it that yesterday they showed that Russia launched like 100 missiles and 200 drones, and Ukraine said, you can leave them links to their own media, Ukrainian media, that they said that they shut down all of them. So no rockets landed, no drones did any damage to the city. And then in next 2 days, you're saying about 1 million people don't have any electricity. Where did it go? Well, the debris that when we intercepted a missile, it fell on our electric grid and now people don't have it. Or really? Is it not? You can just tell them and you get banned. Like, you give them proof. You get banned because you're talking something they don't want you to hear. That's what's happening in Israel. So in Israel, they got a new law where you are not allowed to post footage of any missiles or drone attacks landing in Israel, because that one footage went out when Iran sent a bunch of missiles to Israel, and most of them landed. So they banned that. You can't do that. Iran did the same thing. So how is Israel different from Iran? Are you telling me that Israel is so much better? Based on what? They have the same laws. They're basically the same, except Iran is not attacking everyone around them. Israel is. So I would say Iran is better. Obviously. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. And the censorship is getting worse and worse. Didn't they ban Russians from everything? And then they had in Ukrainian army destroying statues of Soviet generals like Zhukov that liberated Ukraine from Nazis. The guy that saved them from being enslaved by Germany. They destroyed his statue because he's Russian. And Russians are bad. Doesn't matter what kind of Russians live today. This dude in his time gave his life to save you. So what is that telling you when they're destroying these Soviet monuments that are representing people that saved them? It's telling you that Nazis won. Obviously. Who else would want that destroyed if not Nazis? I don't know. It's clearly them. And you have the whole Bandera situation where Ukrainian army is chanting the Bandera song, and Bandera was the guy that collaborated with Nazis, their general, whatever he was. So you can see what they are. It's not that hard to spot. Also, Ukrainians used some Nazi symbols on their military equipment, like trucks and whatever, and even on their uniforms. And they had to remove it for reasons that are, well, Russians are using this in their propaganda to portray us as Nazis. Because it's a Nazi symbol. It's not a propaganda. He's pointing out what's happening. You're wearing the badge. What do you mean? Everything is propaganda. If somebody they don't like it, it's Russian propaganda. He's pointing at you. Look, he's wearing a swastika right here. What does that make them? They're Nazis. And you're like, oh, I'm not wearing this anymore because they're making this propaganda up and calling us Nazis for no reason. It's not propaganda if he's telling the truth. The truth. So yeah, I'm once again getting off rail. That doesn't have anything to do with censorship. It's just, again, me being pissed off about stupid things. So yeah. You see what's happening? I would suggest you, if you really want to see and hear actual news, move to Rumble. Rumble still has freedom of speech. Going on Telegram, I am not 100% sure that Telegram didn't completely 100% comply with the Western proposal, but I still see Russian army posting their advances, their professionalism on the battlefield. They're not showing gruesome dead Ukrainians and horrible scenes like the other side is doing, but they're still posting things that you should look at if you really want to know what's happening on the front. So, if you want some actual news that are not being censored, that would be Rumble, that would be Telegram, and that's pretty much it. That's what we got. We don't have much. Everything else is just covered by the West, and you're not allowed to say things that you're saying. This is definitely getting removed from YouTube, but you can see me on Rumble. So, thank you a lot for being with me today. I'll keep letting you know what they're cooking while you're not looking, and I'll see you on the next one.